things first, I like to check the size of my image. I go to image size, and then I can see that this is at resolution 600, which is nice. It's a nice high-res image. I also noticed that it's the size that it was when it was scanned. So it's like 3 by 4-ish. That's a pretty decent size. I don't want to modify that too much. If this was something really low, I would want to take a look at that and probably change the resolution first. Same thing's true if it's massive. It's going to take forever to modify something if the resolution is really, really big, or if this says something like 48 inches, you're going to want to change it to a more reasonable size before you modify it. It's really important when you're taking a picture from a cell phone, because a lot of the time this size to resolution ratio is going to be weird in a cell phone camera picture. Okay, so good rule of thumb whenever we're editing images is to have an original in the background and then a copy. And we're going to work on the copy so that we can kind of compare what the two look like. I'm going to turn the eyeball off so we don't see that background image, and it's just going to exist behind everything. First, I'm going to eliminate that weird orangey kind of color cast here. So I'm on my background copy. I'm going to go to image, and I can choose adjustments and do black and white, or I can put an adjustment layer on top. Because we haven't done one of those yet, that's how I'm going to do this, is I'm going to do an adjustment layer. The other way I could have done it is I could just throw it into grayscale mode, and that will just discard all that color information. But I want to do it in a way that I can really control it and tweak it, especially because you guys are going to be doing a project where you're working with black and white images. I want to show you how to really, really delicately manipulate something from color into black and white. We do that with an adjustment layer. So adjustments, and I'm going to choose black and white. Okay, now you'll see that I can do it by what the hue is. So if I slide the reds way over, woo, you can see all of that. Matter of fact, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You can actually see where this stain is. So I want the opposite. I want to eliminate the reds from my image, from my black and white image. I can then change the yellows. So how do the yellows fall? Again, I want to pull those out a little bit. Greens don't really matter. There's not really any green in this picture. Cyans, maybe tweak those a little bit. You can kind of see that there's a little blue in there. Same thing here. Let's slide these guys. I don't want to make it too light. And then magenta. It's just going to be that little overall cast. I'm just going to pull it out a little bit. Yeah. And then hit, just close this guy. So you'll see in your layers panel now that you have your background copy and you have your adjustment layer. The adjustment layer has a mask on top of it so we can take it out of certain areas when we want to, but really quickly, already we've made this little modification, right? Cleaned it up a little bit. Boom. Okay. Other things that I can do, I can darken and lighten different areas of my image using the burn and dodge tools. Burn is going to add more exposure to something. Dodge is going to limit the exposure. So one burns it in like a laser, it makes it darker, and then the other one, dodging, is going to lighten it. It comes from working in the dark room. Dodging, you would put something between. Actually has this little icon where it looks like a lollipop, because that's what a dodge tool looks like in the dark room. It would block the light from coming down and darkening your paper by blocking it in certain places with this little like lollipop looking tool. Where burn, on the other hand, you make a hole, kind of like your hand here, and you let the light come through like a laser and darken and burn in certain areas. So I've got my burn tool, and I'm going to darken, boom, just right here on his face a little bit and on the beard. Do we see real quick? Whoop, hang on. How that made his eyes just pop a little bit more? Yeah? Yeah, a little exposure there. I'd also come through and do it a little on the jacket here to kind of fix those light areas like we talked about. Photo P, it's going to be right here, burn tool. So dodge looks like the little lollipop. Burn is going to be the hand. You hold them down to find the secondary tools. So like if you're on healing brush and spot healing brush or quick select and magic wand and you can't find them, you have to hold it down. So burn and dodge are going to be a hold down as well. You're welcome. Okay. So we've gone through, we've kind of burned a little bit. I'd probably go through and do a little bit more retouching, but I don't want to keep you guys forever, so I'm not going to fixate on it too much. I might want to hit the hat here a little bit. And just like any other brush, I can change the size and the hardness of it as well. So I'll make them a little smaller and come through and just crisp up that hat a little bit. Okay. Again, you can see we just made a little bit more exposure. Okay? No major modifications. Next thing, what do you think I need to do? What comes next? These scratches, right? What tool would you use to eliminate some of the scratches and dots? What do we think?
Maybe the Dodge.
You could do the Dodge. It would lighten it a little too much, so you could go through and lighten some of the spots. I'm going to use my Band-Aid, right? I'm going to use my spot healing brush. She works real quick. Again, I can change the brush size based on if I've made a modification that I don't like and I want to go backwards, I turn my history panel on, and then I can move backwards in time. And watch all these guys come back. I'll go all the way back here. Boom, yeah? And you can also move forward too. You're like, that was too much. You can move forward and backward using the history panel. Okay, so now that I've taken a good chunk of these off, I'd probably go through and I darken this corner here again too. And I'm actually going to use the patch tool now. This is one we haven't tried yet. How do you zoom in on the picture? Oh, no, that's a great one. So magnifying glasses to zoom in. I also use the hotkeys on the keyboard, so I can do Command or Control plus and Control minus to zoom in. Okay, so because this is a larger area, rather than just going and using my little brushy, my spot healing brush all over the top of it, I'm actually going to create a patch. So I'm going to click on here and pick a whole big area. And then I'm going to grab that patch and drag it to one of the areas I want it to match. So I'm going to tell it I want it to look more like this. And then it will modify that area. And I could go back through it again. I'd burn this a little bit more too. Like here's a little bit, it's a little soft for me. I'd move it over. That's probably too much, right? So maybe like here-ish. And you can get it to patch a little bit more. And then burn tool on the jacket there. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, not too shabby. Let's take a look at a little before and after of what he looks like. Okay, because I saved that original underneath, I can do it really quickly. So I'm gonna hide first my adjustment layer. Oh, that brings back all that weird color. And then I'm gonna hide all my modifications. You can see, even with just a couple minutes, we cleaned him up quite a bit, right? It's pretty cool, looks nice. I'd probably come through and fix this background a little bit more. I'd work on that, was it his right arm, the left side here. And then there's some stuff in the background I think that needs a little bit more cleanup. But very easily, we've made some nice modifications to it. You could also do a sharpen filter. I like Unsharp Mask. What it does is it sharpens things based on what the surrounding pixels look like. So I'm going to zoom in real quick. Yeah, you can see here what that looks like. And you can change the amount of the sharpening. Whew, you can make it really extreme. Ah! You can change the radius. You can change the threshold. I like to do about 3-ish in terms of threshold. Radius up a little bit. That's too much. And you have this preview box where you can turn it on and off. So that's what it looked like before, that's after. Maybe a little too much. Before and after. Just a little bit more detail, yeah? Especially can see it in the tie here and the edge of the eye. So I'm gonna hit okay. Again, that's what he looks like before. And here's our new version. If you're not like I am a little wanting a little more detail here again. So I come in with my burn. I'm gonna add a little bit here too. It's a little stronger. Okay, guys. So that's a real quick version of doing a easy retouching on a black and white image. I hope you guys can see that made, I think, quite a big difference in the quality of this picture here. Okay, so let's do our next one. This one, I'm going to open a color image. This one's really heavily damaged. It's probably the most damaged one in the folder. And it's on color film. So we can't just go through and just be like, we'll knock out all the reds and everything, right? If we do that, it's going to distort this picture. So I'm going to show you how you're going to do it in certain areas and then bring other ones back. So always, 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 we're duplicating that background layer. Check my image size again. That's okay. 72 is a little low. I'll maybe turn it up to 300 here. Ooh, not 3,000. And then I'm going to tell it I'm doing it for enlargement and I want to preserve my details. Okay, so it gives me a slightly higher res image. Photoshop's going to guess what I want to do based on the surrounding pixels and give it some more. It's not always working super great, but it is a way of doing it. So I would come through and use my healing brush and get rid of as many of these black dots as I possibly can. You guys know how to do that already, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing that, right? We would come through and clean this up. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this color damage here and make some modifications to the color damage. Right, so we come through and clean as many of those little black dots up as possible, especially on the face here. You want to get really close and make your brush nice and small so you're not modifying too much. And try and clean that up a little bit. Oh, yeah, it's not going to like it. We're going to have to probably do that. Move backwards in my history. You're going to want to do that way more carefully, right? So you make it even smaller and do it in little tiny pieces. You can see how it's really blotchy. It's because that image is low resolution. Okay, let's talk about color damage. So rather than just going to image adjustments and throwing a black and white adjustment layer over it, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to duplicate this layer. And again, I would do this after I took as many dots as I could off. And I'm going to label this one. I actually like to label it what the color I'm taking out. So I'm going to call this one orange. Now I'm going to go to image adjustments and I'm going to pick hue and saturation. I always try to emphasize the word hue, because one year I was doing this really, really fast. Like, oh, and hue and saturation. And somebody thought I was saying human saturation, and they were getting very confused. And so it makes me laugh. Every time I do it, I say hue and saturation. Okay, so we're going to pick the hue, which is another word for color. If we just adjust the master or the defaults, it'll give us some kind of fun, you know, default kind of fun stuff. Sepia is even one here. These are like little filtery guys where you're just modifying the color. What I want to do is I'm going to change the master though. I don't want to change every single tone in this image. I just want to change for now. Let's do the yellows. I'm going to desaturate all of my yellows. Boom, and pull them out. This is also how, if you're going to do somebody's teeth, which we're going to do on Wednesday, if you want to clean somebody's teeth up, rather than just lightening, doing a general global lightening, which will make them look really overall white and kind of weird and fakey looking, I usually just go into the yellows channel and drop all of the yellows out. It's a nicer way of working. It's a cleaner way of working. It looks a lot better. Okay, so now I've dropped all the yellows out. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to do it again. Already you can see there's a big change there, right? Now I'm going to drop the reds out as well. So I'm going to go back to that same one where it says orange, and we're going to repeat that same technique. Image, adjustments, hue and saturation. And I'm going to pull all of the reds out. I'm desaturating the reds. And it can actually show me where the range is here too, so you can actually see that as well. And that's before and that's after. So you can see this little preview here. Okay. And then I'm going to repeat it again for the other one so you guys can see adjustments, hue and saturation. And then let's take a look at let's see our magentas. What do those look like? A little in here, not too much. That's fine. What would it look like if I pulled the blues out? Ooh, there's a lot of blue in here, right? That's going to make a big difference. I don't want to do that. So let's just leave our blues alone. I might even just pump it up like 2 or 3 because it's pretty. And let's go to our, let's see, cyan. Cyan's going to be that sky, right? You can play with how intense you want that sky to look. Maybe we'll bump it up 1. So before and after, you can see those little pink casts is pulled out and our blues come up just a little bit. Okay, now that's a significant change from our original, right? Our original looks like this. Our new one looks like this. We've still got a lot of this damage that we want to come through and take out. The other thing that we notice is we've lost the color detail now, right? So her face, we've lost this sort of pinkiness of her face. We've lost the color of her arm. So we want to go and add that back in. We don't want to see this orange adjustment on the skin anywhere. So I'm going to put a mask on top and I'm going to mask out the areas where the skin is. So on the bottom of my layers panel, there's the mask icon. I'm going to turn it on. And notice how it's all white. So all of this image, all of that orange adjustment is showing. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to paint with black on my mask. I'm clicked on the mask. I've got black on my brush. I've got a nice soft brush here. And I'm going to bring the color of her skin and her mouth. Oh, look at that, right? Because before she had no mouth here, right? Ooh. It's gray. Boom, we want some lip color there, right? So let's bring the color of her skin back. You can do it with the hair as well. You're gonna wanna watch out for this patch here, because remember there's orange there. So I'm gonna switch back to my white and take it back out. So I'd bring a little bit of the hair back, but I'd be really careful of bringing too much of it out because I don't want it to be too orangey. And then I come through to the arm here and bring it out in the arm too. You can see in my mask here where I've eliminated it from. Okay, so now what would I do for these areas that are really patchy here? I could do a adjustment. So I could do like a spot healing here and I could try and heal this a little bit. You might get a little somewhere, especially for any of these areas where there's like a black dot kind of thing happening. You could probably patch those fairly okay. So I do a little correction. Again, trying to do as best as I could to make it look close. But anywhere where I'm gonna get a lot of color damage, like down here, try. It's probably gonna get really mad. Yeah, see, it doesn't know what I want it to look like. It's like, hey, that's way too much for me. I'm not capable of understanding what this is. So I would go through and I'd add a color overlay to that. I probably can't get everything to look totally and completely perfect in this image, but I can bring a little bit of something back. So I use the same technique if I want to add a little color to a lip. Let's say I have somebody who's a little washed out in their picture and I want to throw on the equivalent of adding just like a little punch of makeup, like to make somebody look like they just have a little bit more color to their lip. I'll also do it where I'll burn in on eyelashes a little bit. So you don't actually look different than you are. There's just a tiny bit more color to your face, a tiny bit more sparkle. We're gonna do that on the sweater here. So I'm gonna create a new layer. I'm gonna call this Violet. And then I'm going to sample using my eyedropper. Is my blind today? Get funny. Ah, it's on the top up here. Whew. My panel's all funky. I have it double stacked here, so I couldn't find it. So I'm going to use the eyedropper. I'm going to sample this lavender color, this violet color. Notice how it's changed my brush. And then I'm going to paint it over the top. This, of course, is way too much color. We don't want it to look like just paint on there. That looks really, really funky. We're going to change the blending mode to make this painted color, this bucket of color, blend with the layer underneath. So we've got a couple options here. I like overlay. It's making it much darker than I want, but what can I do if I want to just drop it down a little bit? A soft light on there. Other thing is too, if I'm in overlay, I can just drop the opacity. Remember we talked about opacity versus transparency? Something opaque, you can't see through at all. But if I drop the opacity, I'm just keeping the detail, but adding a little bit more of that color richness. Yeah? And you can layer this as well. So like, let's say I want a little bit more purple here, right? And here. I can now drop the opacity of that area again, and you'd want to be really careful and probably patch these edges a little bit more. I wouldn't paint quite on where this seam is. See where the fold in that sweater is? I've kind of lost a little detail there, so I'd probably be really careful about bringing that back. I don't want it to look totally smooth and flat, so I'd be a little careful there. But when you zoom out, again, you've lost that edge here, so that's going to bug me, but so I wouldn't quite go that much on this little edge here. Matter of fact, let's do it because it's bothering me. So I'm going to grab my eraser, make it really thin, and just kind of trace this edge here because I don't want to lose that detail. Maybe even thinner. Okay. So patch it a little bit and then pull it out there. Okay, sorry, distracted. I'm picky. I could do this all day. I love doing this stuff. So before it looked like that, right? Even more so like that. Now it looks like this, right? You see how you can just come through and modify little tiny pieces of that color damage. I would do the whole thing here in the back. I'd just probably grab a nice soft blue brush and right over the top, making it way more uniform. So you're going from an image that's heavily damaged to one that's much cleaner, especially if I go through and take a bunch of these little black flecks out and paint a little blue sky in, add a little blue sky here, a nice soft purple violet color cast there, patch up a little bit of this. White is really easy to come through and clean up. Just turn that lightness up overall, and you could get something that's way better from something that's really heavily damaged. Okay. Last one, global changes. So here, this was one of those ones we talked about, something that just has sort of a vintage look to it. This one I changed really quick, really easy. Image, adjustments, levels. Again, you duplicate the background layer. I wouldn't do this on the original, but I'm trying to make it fast for you. We see our histogram. That's one of our vocab words. I'm going to slide the whites over to where the edge of that histogram is, and then shift this back and forth. You can see really quickly, you've just done a really simple color adjustment. You can actually see that the baby is in yellow here, where before you're like, oh, it just looks like white. So you can see that shift, really easy, punches it up a little bit. I can also adjust the color balance. These are all global adjustments, making major changes to the whole image. Before, after. You can adjust the highlights, midtones, and shadows. Here I want the highlights to be less red, so I'm going to cool them off a little bit. I want the midtones to be more yellow. I want my shadows to be cooler as well. Just plain a little bit. So that's before, that's after. Again, it really depends on what you want this to feel like. You can add this different energy depending on what you want it to kind of see. Okay. Other thing that's fun about this one, I hit cancel because I didn't want to save it. I can go adjustments. We can pick hue and saturation again. Again, you can turn up the master yellows so you can make that baby sweater a little bit more yellow. You can also hit colorize. Go back to the master here. Colorize. And what that will do is it'll allow me to put a color cast over the whole thing. So it's kind of like making a black and white image, except for it's going to be just color based instead. And you can change the saturation of it. You have grandpa in hot pink if you want, whatever you're into. That's how you add like a little color cast instead. Something that's a little fun, very different. Probably not the right choice for every picture, but I do want you guys to know how to make a global hue change. All right,